What's good, everybody? Happy Friday. Wrapping it up here. Government shutdown. Nobody seems to care. Nobody seems to be worried about it. But I'll tell you, some of the sectors did respond a little bit cautiously, so we're going to go through that today. As always, this is not financial advice. This is strictly educational only. You should always consult with a registered financial professional before making any investment decisions. Of course, use common sense. You know I have to say that. Let's get started on a few things here today. The Dow was higher by 53, S&P was higher by 12, and the Nasdaq was higher by 40. However, the Dow should have been up 100. So the general rule of thumb is if you take a look at the S&P 500, let's say today it was up 12. If it's a fluid, generally, all across the board, strong market, then you should be able to add a 0 to whatever the S&P is up, and the Dow should be up roughly about the same amount. So for today, the S&P was up 12, but the Dow was only up 53. So that says already something's happening. There's something there's different here. Something's holding back the Dow, or something's really pushing forward the S&P. There's a little disconnect there. So we'll take a look at that in a second. We actually have the answer for you. That's the end of the week. Options expiration took care of the markets today. Very kind of choppy markets as expected. Retail stocks. Retail was the big mover today, and that's really what helped the S&P kind of push itself over the edge. Basically, if you look at the S&P 500, almost every stock that's out there in retail world was an S&P retail stock. So we'll take a deeper look at that. Let me load up the S&P here, S&P 500. Yeah, your top leaders today, we'll go through those. Nike and the Dow especially too there. Nike was up. A lot of great news for Nike. A lot of great news for retail stocks today. Nike added about 4.5%, almost 5%, breaking out to the new highs today. They got an upgrade from Wedbush and some really positive comments there. So a lot of people feel, or that analyst feels very strongly that Nike's going to make a pretty strong push this year. Kohls, another name. We've been talking about this a lot, so I feel like we'll keep bringing it up. Kohls, retail stock here up 5%, actually 4% here after hours. So there's a company called Jefferies. There's a lot of popular analysts there, and when they speak, a lot of people like to listen. Well, one of their analysts came out today and said they think Kohls now will have a $100 price target. And so what they actually did was upgraded the stock, and they said, that's our price target. We are making decisions at that $100 level. So Kohls rocketing higher here. It was up to $67.55 for a high today, all because one analyst had a lot of good things to say. Sticking with retail, Mattel even 6% today for Mattel. They had pretty good guidance going forward. They're saying their earnings and revenue are going to be good for the next quarter as well as for the next year. And something interesting, you think of Mattel as like a toy company. They've been making the transition into content and creating original content that they can then license and sell. I haven't read a lot about that, but I find that pretty interesting that Mattel is recognizing physical toys may not be their future, but if they can make the move and grab the kids' attention on their phones, they may be able to make some money from that. So another retail stock, obviously, that did well today, up about 6%. Under Armour even participated in the move today. The Under Armour's been getting beaten up lately. It was up about 4% today. Basically just riding along with the retail sector today. There's no great news to report in Under Armour. They just got a day, they've been beaten up so much. A little bit of help there today. So looking pretty good. Let's move on to IBM. That was one of your reasons that the Dow was held back today. I believe IBM was one of, if not the worst performer in the Dow. Let's take a look. IBM was your worst performer, down 4%. That's a little bit of a heavy weighting that IBM has on the Dow. And so that's one of the reasons you see, hey, why wasn't the Dow as high as the other markets percentage-wise? That's IBM's. They announced earnings. Earnings all came in better than expected. No problems there. But their full-year profit forecast was the disappointment. That was what everybody chose to focus on. That's why you don't guess what a stock is going to do during earnings, because earnings and revenue were great. But the company came out and they actually said, hey, going forward, not looking so good. They lowered that profit forecast. So really, because of the words the company said, that's what pushed the stock lower, even though everything was basically good for their current quarter's results, or previous quarter. The other one that weighed down the Dow today, again, was General Electric. You can't even see it. It's fallen off my charts here. They made all new record lows today. Down 3% again. That's brand new lows. That's new lows for 3 days in a row. The stock's basically taken a nosedive. to the downside, and that held back your Dow stocks today. So there's your sort of lesson of the day. You wonder, why is the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq pushing a 0.5% gain on the day, but the Dow 30 was only about 0.25%? It's basically because of those two names, the IBM and General Electric, and a lot of those retail stocks in the S&P able to push that higher. I believe the retail sector, consumer discretionary and consumer staples, makes up almost 20% of the S&P 500. So that is your reason for the disconnect today. All eyes are on the government shutdown, right? What's going to happen going forward? I don't know. It appears that they like the drama more than they like the results. Nobody's talking about what's actually going to be in the budget's new, funding, or whether they even extend it short term or go for the big bill. They're just talking about the drama and how it's the Democrats' fault, it's the Republicans' fault, and we're close, we're going to work a deal. I hate that. So we'll see by Monday. Hopefully they stick it out over the weekend and figure something out. It appears at the moment that basically there's no good news. So we'll see. Hey, anyways, thanks for watching. If you like this, we do videos on lots of other retirement investing stuff like Roth IRAs and 401ks. Be sure to check out these videos up here if you like that, or go to jazzwealth.com. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.